They called her just another shooter with a rifle. Maya Cruz let them believe it, hiding her combat medic training behind a sniper's scope. When the ambush left bodies bleeding in the dirt and their medic dead, she faced an impossible choice: reveal her secret or watch her squad die. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. The morning sun cast long shadows across the forward operating base as Specialist Maya Cruz sat alone, methodically cleaning her sniper rifle. Her hands moved with practiced precision, each motion deliberate and careful. At 24, she had already earned a reputation as one of the finest marksmen in the unit, but that was all anyone saw in her, just another shooter with good aim. The other soldiers didn't know about the nights she spent studying medical textbooks in secret, or the advanced combat medic training she had completed before joining this unit. She kept that knowledge buried deep, letting them see only what they expected to see. Sergeant Williams approached with the rest of the patrol team: Corporal Jones, Private Garcia, and Private Thompson. They looked at her with the usual mixture of respect for her shooting skills and dismissal of everything else she might offer. "Cruz, gear up. We move in 10, Williams called out. She nodded and slung her rifle over her shoulder, catching the whispered comments from Jones about babysitting the sniper girl again. Garcia mentioned she was good with that rifle, but Thompson's cruel words cut deeper. "That's all she's good for. Point and shoot." Cruz had heard these comments countless times before, but they still stung. She buried the hurt and focused on the mission ahead. Doc Reynolds, the unit's medic, walked up carrying his heavy medical bag. He was a good man, skilled at his job, and one of the few who treated her with genuine respect. "Ready to keep these idiots alive, Cruz?" he asked with a friendly smile. She managed a small smile back and replied, "That's your job, Document." He laughed and said, "Mine and mine alone, right? You just worry about putting holes in bad guys." Cruz nodded, but behind her eyes lay years of medical knowledge that could save lives, knowledge no one suspected she possessed. The 6-soldier patrol moved through the Rocky Mountain terrain like ghosts in the morning light. Cruz took point position, her eyes constantly scanning for threats through her scope. Williams led from the center, keeping the team together, while Doc Reynolds stayed close behind, ready to help anyone who might get hurt. The intel had said the area was clear, and the soldiers began to relax as they moved deeper into enemy territory. This would prove to be a deadly mistake. "Easy patrol today," Jones commented as they climbed a steep ridge. "Cruz won't even need to fire a shot." Garcia chuckled and added, "She's probably disappointed. Can't show off her only skill." The cruel words hung in the air like a curse. Cruz kept walking, her jaw tight with suppressed anger and hurt. Through her scope, she studied the ridgeline ahead, and something made her skin crawl with fear. The silence was too complete, too perfect. Birds should be singing. Insects should be buzzing. But there was nothing. "Sergeant, something feels wrong," she called back to Williams. "Too quiet." Williams barely looked up from his map. "It's supposed to be quiet, Cruz. Relax." But Cruz couldn't relax. Every instinct screamed danger. "Sir, I recommend we take the lower route. More cover down there." Williams shook his head dismissively. "We stick to the planned route. You worry about shooting, let me worry about tactics." The words hit her like a slap, but she had no choice but to obey orders. They crested the ridge just as the world exploded into chaos. Muzzle flashes erupted from 3 different positions as enemy fighters opened fire from concealment. The ambush was perfect, deadly, and devastating. Bullets whistled through the air like angry hornets as the patrol dove for whatever cover they could find behind rocks and scraggly bushes. "Ambush, ambush!" Williams screamed into his radio as dirt and stone chips flew around them. "We need immediate support." But the radio crackled with static. They were on their own. Cruz immediately began returning fire, her rifle barking as she sent precise shots toward the enemy positions. One by one she began eliminating threats, but there were too many of them and they had the high ground advantage. Then the screaming started. Garcia went down first, clutching his leg as blood poured between his fingers. A sniper's bullet had shattered his femur, and he was losing blood fast. Thompson tried to reach him but took a round through his shoulder, spinning him around and dropping him hard against a boulder. The young soldier's face went white with shock and pain. "Doc, Doc!" Williams shouted desperately, but when Cruz looked back, her heart nearly stopped. Doc Reynolds lay motionless behind a rock, his medical bag just out of reach. A single bullet had found its mark and their lifeline was gone. The unit's only medic was dead, and 2 soldiers were bleeding out under heavy enemy fire. "Garcia's hit bad," Jones yelled, trying to apply pressure to the massive leg wound while bullets whined overhead. He's losing too much blood. Thompson was conscious but fading fast, his shoulder wound bleeding steadily. Without immediate medical attention, both men would die within minutes. Cruz felt time slow down as she faced an impossible choice. She could stay in her sniper position and continue picking off enemies, or she could reveal the secret she had kept hidden for months. Her advanced combat medic training called to her. She knew exactly what needed to be done to save both men. But using that knowledge would expose her carefully guarded secret. Another burst of enemy fire raked their position, and Garcia's screams grew weaker. He was going into shock. Time was running out. Cruz made her decision in a heartbeat that would change everything. "Cover me," she shouted, abandoning her sniper position and sprinting toward the wounded soldiers. Williams stared at her in confusion. "Cruz, get back to your rifle. We need suppressing fire." But she was already sliding on her knees beside Garcia, her hands moving with surprising confidence as she assessed his wounds. "What are you doing?" Jones demanded, but Cruz ignored him. She ripped open Garcia's pants leg, exposing the devastating bullet wound. Blood was spurting in rhythmic jets. The bullet had nicked his femoral artery. Without immediate intervention, he would bleed to death in minutes. Her hands moved with practiced skill as she applied direct pressure to the artery, stopping the bleeding instantly. "I need the medical kit from Doc's bag," she ordered with authority that surprised everyone. "Now." Her voice carried the confidence of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. Thompson was growing pale, his breathing shallow. Cruz quickly examined his shoulder wound while maintaining pressure on Garcia's leg. "Bullet went clean through," she muttered to herself. "No major vessels hit, but he's losing blood fast." With one hand still controlling Garcia's bleeding, she used her free hand to pack Thompson's wound with gauze. "How do you know how to do this?" Williams asked in amazement, but bullets forced him back into cover before Cruz could answer. She was in full medic mode now, her training taking over completely. She pulled out an 4-needle and line from Doc's kit, sliding it into Garcia's arm with one smooth motion. "Jones, hold this bag up high," she commanded, hanging a bag of saline solution. "Keep it elevated or he dies." Jones, too shocked to argue, did exactly as she said. Cruz then turned her attention to Thompson, checking his pulse and pupil response. "You're going to be okay," she told him softly. "Just stay with me." The enemy fire was getting closer, more accurate. Dirt and rock fragments showered down on them as bullets impacted all around their position. Cruz worked with steady hands, completely focused on saving lives while death flew overhead. She applied a pressure bandage to Thompson's shoulder, securing it tight enough to control bleeding but not so tight as to cut off circulation. "Garcia's pressure is dropping," she announced, checking his pulse. "He's going into hypovolemic shock." The words came out with medical precision that left the other soldiers staring. This wasn't the quiet sniper they thought they knew. This was a trained combat medic working miracles under fire. Cruz quickly elevated Garcia's legs, improving blood flow to his vital organs. She checked his bandages, ensuring the arterial bleeding remained controlled. "He needs surgery soon, but he'll live if we can get him out of here," she said with confidence born of extensive medical knowledge. "Where did you learn to do this?" Williams demanded between bursts of return fire. Cruz looked up at him, her hands still working to stabilize Thompson. "I'm a fully qualified combat medic, Sergeant. I completed my training before joining this unit." The revelation hit them like a thunderbolt. Their sniper, the woman they had dismissed as just a shooter, was also a highly trained medic. "Why didn't you tell us?" Jones asked, his voice filled with confusion and amazement. Cruz's eyes hardened slightly. "Would you have believed me? Would you have trusted me?" The silence that followed spoke volumes. They all knew the answer. They had seen her only as a sniper, nothing more. The enemy fire suddenly intensified, and Williams cursed as he realized their situation was getting desperate. "We're pinned down hard. Cruz, can you get back to your rifle?" But she shook her head firmly. "These men will die if I leave them. Garcia's still critical, and Thompson needs constant monitoring." She was torn between her two roles, the sniper who could eliminate threats and the medic who could save lives. "I can do both," she decided suddenly. "Jones, take over pressure on Garcia's bandage. Firm and steady." She showed him exactly where to press. "Thompson, you keep talking to me. Don't you dare fall asleep." She grabbed her rifle and belly crawled to a position where she could see the enemy. What happened next was like watching a master at work. Cruz alternated between taking precise sniper shots and rushing back to check on her patients. She would fire, eliminate a threat, then sprint back to adjust in 4 or check vital signs. The other soldiers watched in complete amazement as she seamlessly switched between her two roles. "Tango down, 2 o'clock," she called out after dropping an enemy sniper. Then immediately, "Garcia, how are you feeling? Can you wiggle your toes?" She was fighting a war on two fronts, against the enemy trying to kill them, and against death trying to claim her wounded comrades. During a brief lull in the fighting, Cruz performed what could only be described as battlefield surgery. Garcia's wound had reopened slightly, and she needed to properly clamp the damaged artery. Working with steady hands while bullets occasionally cracked overhead, she cleaned the wound and applied a proper arterial clamp. "This is going to hurt," she warned Garcia before beginning. His screams echoed off the rocks, but when she finished, the bleeding had stopped completely. Thompson was struggling to stay conscious, his face pale and sweaty. Cruz checked his pulse. It was getting weaker. "He's losing too much blood," she muttered, quickly starting another four-line. Her movements were swift and sure, every action that of a trained professional. The other soldiers could only watch in amazement as their quiet sniper transformed into a life-saving angel of mercy. "Contact left," Williams shouted as more enemy fighters appeared. Cruz grabbed her rifle and sent 3 quick shots downrange, each one finding its target. "Threats neutralized," she reported calmly, then immediately turned back to her patients. "Garcia, stay with me. You're doing great." She adjusted his foredrip and checked his pulse again. Stronger now. He was going to make it. The battle raged for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. Cruz continued her deadly dance between sniper and medic, saving lives and taking them with equal skill. She dropped enemy fighters with precision shots, then rushed back to monitor vital signs and adjust bandages. Her squad mates watched in growing respect and amazement as they realized the incredible woman they had underestimated for so long. "How is this possible?" Thompson whispered weakly as Cruz checked his bandages again. She looked into his young eyes with compassion. "I trained for 3 years as a combat medic before I picked up a sniper rifle," she explained softly. "I wanted to save lives, not just take them." The irony wasn't lost on any of them. The woman they had seen as just a killer was actually their salvation. The enemy fire finally began to slacken as Cruz's accurate shooting took its toll. One by one, she eliminated the ambush team until only silence remained. But her work wasn't done. Garcia needed immediate evacuation to a field hospital, and Thompson required careful monitoring to prevent shock from setting in. "Command, this is Bravo 6, Williams called into his radio, his voice filled with new respect. "We need immediate medical evacuation. 2 wounded, stable but critical." He looked at Cruz with admiration. "Casualties stabilized by our combat medic." The words felt strange coming out of his mouth, but they were true. As they waited for the helicopter, Cruz continued working on her patients. She checked their vitals every few minutes, adjusted their foredrips, and monitored them for signs of shock or infection. Her hands never stopped moving, never stopped healing. The same hands that could put a bullet through a target at 800 yards were now gently checking pulse points and cleaning wounds. "I'm sorry," Jones said quietly as he watched her work. "We were wrong about you. Completely wrong." Cruz looked up at him, exhaustion showing in her eyes for the first time. "You saw what you expected to see," she replied without bitterness. "A woman with a rifle, nothing more." But now they were seeing everything, the skill, the knowledge, the compassion that made her so much more than just a sniper. Garcia grabbed her hand weakly. "Thank you," he whispered. "You saved my life." Tears ran down his dirty cheeks as he realized how close he had come to dying. Thompson nodded agreement, too weak to speak but his eyes showing deep gratitude. These men would live because of her skills, her training, her refusal to let them die even when they had never valued her as anything more than a weapon. The sound of helicopter rotors echoed through the mountains as the medical evacuation team approached. Cruz had done everything possible to keep her squad mates alive, but now they needed surgery and advanced care that only a hospital could provide. She had bought them time, given them a chance, and that was enough. As the medics loaded Garcia and Thompson onto stretchers, the lead flight medic looked at Cruz with professional respect. "Who did the initial treatment?" he asked Williams. "Outstanding work. These men would have died without proper intervention." Williams pointed to Cruz, who was quietly cleaning blood from her hands. "Our sniper. Turns out she's also one hell of a medic." The flight medic approached Cruz directly. "Where did you train?" he asked with genuine curiosity. "Fort Sam Houston Advanced Combat Medic Course," she replied simply. 3 years of training before I specialized in marksmanship." The medic whistled low in appreciation. That explains the quality of work. You saved both their lives today. Cruz just nodded, watching as her wounded squad mates were loaded into the helicopter. After the helicopter disappeared over the mountains, the remaining soldiers sat in stunned silence. Everything they thought they knew about Maya Cruz had been shattered and rebuilt in the span of an hour. She wasn't just a sniper who happened to know some first aid, she was a fully trained combat medic who could also shoot with deadly accuracy. "Why didn't you ever tell us?" Williams asked as they prepared to move back to base. Cruz shouldered her rifle and looked at each of them in turn. "Because you never asked," she said simply. "You saw the rifle and assumed that was all there was to me. You made your minds up before you ever got to know me." Her words carried no anger, just sad truth that cut deep into their hearts. The walk back to base was different than any patrol they had ever done together. The men looked at Cruz with new eyes, seeing not just a shooter but a complete soldier, someone who could take lives when necessary and save them when possible. She had proven herself in the most dramatic way possible, under enemy fire with lives hanging in the balance. Thompson and Garcia both made full recoveries, returning to duty 6 weeks later with scars that would remind them forever of the day their sniper became their savior. They never again questioned Cruz's abilities or treated her as anything less than an equal. The story of the sniper medic spread through the entire base, earning her the respect she had always deserved but never demanded. From that day forward, Cruz carried both her rifle and a medical kit on every mission. She had stopped hiding her skills, stopped pretending to be less than she was. The unit had learned that their quiet sniper was actually their most valuable asset, a soldier who could protect them from enemies and save them from death itself. Years later, when the war was over and they had all returned home, the members of that patrol would still tell the story of the day their sniper revealed she was so much more. They would speak of Maya Cruz with reverence and gratitude, remembering the woman who had saved their lives while they were busy underestimating her. She had taught them that true strength comes not from what you can destroy, but from what you can save, protect, and heal. The mountains that day had witnessed something extraordinary, the transformation of a dismissed soldier into a recognized hero. Cruz had always been both sniper and medic, but now the world could see her completely. She was no longer hiding in the shadows of others' expectations. She was standing in the full light of her own incredible abilities, and that light had saved lives when it mattered most.